In our last Unity tutorial, you might recall we made this 2D character controller, which is all fine and dandy, but this doesn't look very good. So today we're going to replace this with character sprites and animation. As you can see down here, I've already imported a whole bunch of sprite frames. I've already made some animations out of them, so we've got idle and walking animations for left and right. We're doing those separately because the shading on those sprites is different. And the simplest way to create a sprite animation is just to select multiple sprites and just drag it into your scene, and you'll be prompted with creating a new animation. And let's start going back into the movement script here. So double click to open up that script. And you'll recall that this is the script that we made for the character movement. Nothing too complicated, but you might want to go back over it real quick if you've forgotten. For anything else though, we're going to add a animator, not an animation, an animator. And for that we're going to need an animation controller. So in our animations here, let's right click and create a animator controller and just call it dragon. It's definitely not a Yoshi. Drag that over in here, and now we have this controller set here. So if we double click this, we'll get a new window open here, which gives us a state machine where we can drag in our animations as animation states. So we've got left idle, right walking, and left walking. For a 2D sprite-based character, we actually don't need any of these transitions. You can make transitions like this between states, and that allows you to blend together 3D armatures. But since we have 2D sprites, those can't blend together, so we might as well just keep them separate and activate them through code. So our script is going to need a couple of things to work here. It's going to need to remember whether or not we're going left or right for when we go into the idle pose. So first things first, we're going to add a bool and just call it going left. This will just keep track of whether or not we're going left. The moment we go right, we just set this to false. So in our update function, we're going to be checking if input get axis raw horizontal is less than 0. It'll be -1 or anything between 0 and -1, which means that we'll be going right. So going left will be set to false. After that, we're going to put another if statement here, and we're going to copy this entire thing over, actually. And we'll just change that to larger than 0. The reason we're not just doing an else there is because we want to make sure that we're not actually at 0. Because when we're at 0, that means we're not putting anything in. So this variable shouldn't change, because at that point we're just idling. And we set going left to being true. So quick little editing thing here. I messed up the left and right directions. So you're going to want to change these around to being the other way around. Now, to keep this update function a little bit more readable, I'm actually going to make a separate function for all of the animator functionality. There's no functional reason for this. It's just to make this easier to read. So we're going to make a void animation handling. You can call it whatever you want. That's just what I'm going to be calling this method. And in order to change what the animator does, obviously, we're going to need an animator variable. Just call it animator. Give it a value at void start. Now we can start making a bunch of if statements in here. So if input get axis raw, we can just kind of like copy over these two for the first bit here. So instead of changing the going left, and since we're checking the same thing anyway, it's redundant to have this code here, so we might as well just delete it here. So if we're going left, we're going to set the animator.play is going to have a name in it for the animation that we're playing. So if we're going right, we want to use right walk. And if we're going left, obviously we want left walk. Then we'll copy this over again. But instead of checking horizontal axis raw being greater or less than equal to, we're just going to check if it's exactly equal to 0. So if there's no input going on whatsoever. And we'll nest that with another if statement. And within this if statement, we'll just check for going left. Because if we are going left, we'll play animator left idle. And if we're not going left, so we can just do an else here, we will play right idle. And finally, once we've done all that, we can say animation handling at the end of our update method. Important note here is that you should make sure that your animation clips have loop time enabled. They should by default, if you've made them in the way that I showed you at the beginning of the video, just make sure that that's the case. And just to make this a little less confusing, we're going to change this sprite renderer to just use one of these sprites, and we'll change the color back to being white because otherwise it'll be tinted. And just like that, our character has sprite animation. You could also add a jumping animation. The jumping animations I have right now are only one single frame, so it's a little iffy to include them in this way. You could overwrite the sprite renderer with a specific sprite and stuff like that. If you know what I'm talking about, you can do that. If you don't worry about it. Just make a multiple frame animation and implement it in much the same way as we did here. I'll make a follow-up to this soon, and we'll be doing a 3D animation controller where we'll actually make use of the transitions and the blending of different skeletal poses to have smooth animation with that.